Hey gang, short video today. I want to share some thoughts and ask your opinion on something. Is it easier and better to learn guitar today than ever before? It's not as clear-cut as you think. We'll discuss why and why the answer should matter to you. Coming right up. What got me thinking about all this is that I was thinking about going to the New York State Blues Festival this upcoming weekend, and I realized I was thinking about it totally differently than I would have when I was younger. On the one hand, I could see who's in it, all the bands, Google them, look them up on YouTube, and see a bunch of their songs. Probably more than I could see at the Blues Fest. But on the other hand, that experience would nowhere near be as deep as going and soaking in the festival. And I just realized that when I was younger, I would have only done that because I didn't have YouTube and Google available. And that led me naturally to, is it easier to learn guitar today? Because, I'm a learner just like you are. And at first the answer seems pretty obvious. For one thing, the equipment is so much cheaper today than it was. And I'm talking about decent equipment too. For $500 or so, you can get a great guitar or a fantastic amp that you can use even gigging. So the cost of getting in is quite a bit less than it was back then. I mean, believe me, in the 70s and 80s, and I'm sure before that, the cheap equipment really was cheap. There's also so much more accessible instructional content. I mean, there's YouTube, obviously. We didn't have that before the internet. But not only that, there's also tabs that are available on the internet and backing tracks. I mean, that's super helpful. And sometimes the tabs are even interactive where you can play them and slow them down and all that kind of stuff. There's also courses that are available, right? You can buy specific courses on, say, R&B guitar or blues guitar or rock guitar or something like that. So I would say, yeah, if you want to learn a specific Led Zeppelin song or a Van Halen song, I would agree. It's easier to do that today than ever before. But if your goal, like mine, is to become a better guitar player and musician, to do your own renditions of songs, to improvise, to read and write your own music, then I think the answer is not so simple. First of all, there's just so much out there today that it can be totally overwhelming. I mean, if you're like me, you get distracted. It's sort of like if you're on a diet and you go into the kitchen and somebody else in the house bought pizza and chips and beer or soda and chocolate cake, and man, you're trying hard not to eat it, but it's tough. So even if I'm learning a specific song, I might bounce from one YouTube instructor to another or download tab or what have you. In all that time, I could have spent maybe a half hour or so listening to the song, really getting it into my ears. Heck, I might have even memorized the song and the solo by then, so I'm just learning from ear by then. Now, before the internet, that's what we had. Play the record, pick up the needle, play it again, pick up the needle, play it again, listen again. And we didn't even know it. We thought we were learning a song, but we were developing our ears and our tonal memory. But that's a deep learning experience that's harder to do today because it's so much easier just to look at the tab or to listen to somebody else doing it. And before I get accused of going on a total get off my lawn rant, people my age, we had things that people before us didn't. We had an album that we could play and a recording that we could play, and those were harder to come by in earlier generations. So just acknowledging that as well. Another thing I want to talk about, and the last point kind of acknowledged this a little bit, but this will really drive it home, is that we all know that self-learning is really the only kind of learning. A teacher can guide you, but learning yourself is really the main thing. And it was just easier to focus back in the 70s and 80s. Case in point, I used to read Guitar Player magazine all the time, Guitar World too, but Guitar Player was maybe a little less trashy. And I remember one month they had an interview with Joe Pass that I was just blown away by him as a player. So I voraciously read the interview, and there's so much that I got from that interview even today. But one thing I remembered that I think illustrates this point is he mentioned that a thing that made a difference in his play in a major way was to learn the major scale in 5 different places on the fretboard. Now, he didn't say caged. He didn't say here are the fingering positions. It was just a sentence in there. So I took it upon myself to actually do that. And I spent days or probably weeks, right? My memory is different. When you're a teenager, you have nothing but time. I might have spent weeks or even months working out the fingerings of 5 different places on the fretboard. Now, I didn't know this, but I was kind of reinventing caged. We didn't even talk about caged back then, but I remember showing it to somebody later and the person said, "Oh, you're just playing caged." I said, "What's caged?" But the point is that I knew my own fingerings really, really well. And in fact, they weren't exactly the caged fingerings that you see today. They were my own, and they fit my own fingers and so forth. That is really, really difficult to get today because there's just, again, so much that's available. Heck, you just look up the fretboard diagrams. It's all right there for you, already done. Why learn something else? Well, it's because it takes time and it'll soak into your own hands and becomes part of who you are as a player. That's a huge thing. Now, another thing is that you've got a vast array of choices of learning material, even if you want to do structured learning. I mean, back in the day, this is kind of a cliche, but we had Mel Bay, right? You had one teacher in town and he taught out a Mel Bay program. And if you're like me, I'm one of those guys who learned from the Mel Bay books. And you know what? I would say, but I don't want to learn Danny Boy or Arkansas Traveler or Brahms' Hungarian Dance Number 5. But learn it I did. And I think it has really served me well. I not only learned Led Zeppelin from the records, but I was able to learn and assimilate all of those melodies into my play. I think it's really helped me come up with good and original ideas and helped me become the player who I am today. So why does all this matter? I'm going to offer up 2 things to think about. Number 1, your attitude. If you're an older player like me, don't grumble about what you didn't have when you were younger. Enjoy what you've got today and be thankful that you had the time to focus when you were younger and you didn't have all these distractions. Heck, it really is a blessing to me that I didn't have the caged fingerings because I wouldn't know them the same way that I do today if I didn't have to learn them and figure them all out for myself. That's really a blessing. All right? And if you're younger, find a way to say, okay, I've got all these things available and I just know I need to focus. And that brings me to the second point. If you are like me and prone to distractions, I know everybody's always going to say, take out a Google Sheets or a spreadsheet or whatever and plan out the next 6 months and have goals. You know what? That never worked for me and it may not work for you. But you know what does work for me? When I'm ready to practice, I take out a piece of paper, I take out a pen, yes, the analog pen, and I write down what I'm going to do in the next half hour or hour. And you know what? Just that act of focusing for 30 seconds or so and writing it down makes a big difference. So if you like to focus like I do, focus on this playlist because in that playlist, I've got lots of simple ideas that you can incorporate into your own play and make your own and really get more joy out of playing the guitar and out of life. All right, so click that and we'll see you in the next video.